Welcome to Aussizz Conclave 4.0. We hope that you are excited to know all about Global Talent Visa and MATES program. Now get ready to meet the experts who will guide you through your journey today. Wazma Akbary is a highly motivated registered migration agent with nearly 4 years of experience. Currently a GTI case manager, Wazma has a deep understanding of the immigration process and is dedicated to providing clients with efficient and stress-free service. With over 150 cases under her belt, Wazma is a valuable asset to the team. And Vaibhav Patel is a seasoned migration professional with over 14 years of experience as the principal migration agent and director of NSW at Town Hall, Sydney. Vaibhav is passionate about helping people achieve their migration goals. With a proven track record of over 3,000 successful cases, Vaibhav is a trusted advisor for all your migration needs. That is all from my side. Sit back and enjoy the session. You are in good hands. Now I would like Vaibhav to take over from here.
Thank you very much, Ruddhi, and a warm welcome to all our viewers. I'm not going to make it too boring. I'll try to make it more engaging. So I'll also have my colleague Wazma who will make it more like a discussion rather than just a boring PPT session. So let's start. So I understand that you are here to understand about Global Talent Visa. First of all, Wazma, if you can just brief our viewers about Global Talent Visa and what is it and how does it work? And if you can just give us a brief first, and then we'll go one by one in each criteria.
Sure, no problem. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So the Global Talent Visa, the program first started in 2019, just before COVID hit, and it's been very successful till date. And as the name suggests, the Australian government are looking for individuals in their chosen sectors, which they call the future target sectors. They're looking for individuals who are the brightest, the best, the top tier in those sectors. It is a permanent visa. So once you attain the visa, you do arrive to Australia on a permanent visa, or if you're here in Australia, you get your PR.
Thank you very much, Wazma. And yes, this is a very fast-track visa. I think this is one of the very few visas that we have in Australian immigration system that gives you a PR access to a direct permanent visa in very short period of time. So let's get into the eligibility criteria. Wazma, if you can walk us through briefly about the eligibility criteria, and then I have few next slides which are going to talk about each criteria in detail. So if you can brief us about the criteria, what are the criteria that the department looks at, and we'll discuss about each criteria in detail in the next slides.
Sure, no problem. So the first criteria obviously is that the individual or the candidate needs to fall in one of the future 10 target sectors. That's first and foremost. The second thing that they look at is the individual's profile, the prominence of the individual's profile. So again, as the name suggests, it's the Global Talent Visa. So they were looking for individuals who are highly talented. They're looking for individuals who have received international recognition for the work that they've done. They're looking for individuals who are going to be an asset to Australia because it is called the future focused sectors. And the Australian government have specifically said that they believe that these sectors are going to boom in the coming years. So they need to prove that they're going to be an asset to Australia in their target sector. By far, this criteria is the most important criteria because it determines the person's achievements to date. The third criteria is the high income threshold. So as I'm not sure if you're aware, but on the 1st of July every year, the Australian government sets a high income threshold for individuals who are working in positions that are quite senior. And that figure is adjusted on the 1st of July every year. And the individual or the candidate that's applying for this visa pathway needs to meet the high income threshold criteria. Now, we'll discuss later on in terms of how that's done, whether obviously some clients are located overseas, some are located onshore, so we'll discuss that in detail later on. And the fourth criteria is a nominator. So the individual needs to have a nominator. Now, a nominator can be an individual or it can be an Australian organisation. Again, we will discuss the nominator's profile in detail later on.
Right. Now, Wazma, thank you very much. And we've been working together on these cases for a long time now, since it started. So let's talk about the priority sectors. So if you can brief us about the priority sectors and give us some examples of it too, of the cases that we have done.
Sure. So I think the priority sectors that are listed, we've covered all of them in terms of the clients that we've had till date. We, as in terms of Aussizz, you and I as a team, we've been quite successful in this regard because the clientele that we have very much meet the criteria for global talent and fall within those target sectors. Now, there's agri-food, ag-tech, there's energy, there's health industries, defence, advanced manufacturing and space, circular economy, digital technology, infrastructure and tourism, financial services and fintech, and education. Now, these target sectors, they all have sub-target sectors as well. So there is many other target sectors that fall within, for example, financial services, fintech. We've had clients from some of the world's most prominent banks, whether it's the World Bank or whether it's Bank of America, whether it's the banks in Singapore that are quite prominent, or even Australia, whether it's Commonwealth Bank or the Westpac, the Big Four. We've had individuals who work in quite senior roles, whether it's on the tech side or financial services side. We've covered all of it. Digital technology, again, very broad individuals who work, whether it's, they're designing apps or whether they're specialized in cloud functions. I think we've covered almost all of it. Anything you want to add on, Vaibhav?
Yes. So I think in health industry, if you remember, we had an orthodontist, right? So he had a very good profile that he was presenting all around the world. I think many universities had invited him. So I think I remember that case. Then we had applicants from ag-tech, someone who's completed PhD in Australia and was working on a project that was going to change how the agriculture industry works in Australia and the technologies that are used in Australia. So basically, I think priority sectors are, you can't limit yourself. Like, let's say, for example, the example that I gave of orthodontist, he didn't seem to meet the requirement of health industries. It did not seem that he was falling in health industries. But when we actually presented the case to the department saw that, yes, this person who is very prominent, and we can see that that person has contributed indirectly into the invention of technology or evolving the existing technology into something advanced. So he was, I think, invited in Japan to participate in the understanding of how this medical instrument can be improved. So
correct.
So, and he was also invited into universities in New Zealand and Singapore to speak about his understanding about the dentist industry, right? So I think you can't just limit yourself to these priority sectors, but the department looks at overall if your profile fits in any of this, even somewhat relevant, and you can justify that how you fit in this industry, you can easily get into it. So let's get into more about what of the talents, Wazma, you think the department looks at. So when you say, okay, you have to be highly talented, it's a very common word, right? So how
Yes.
do you explain, how do I prove that I'm a highly talented person?
So I've actually had this back and forth with the department, and they've been very clear when they've said, when it comes to our individual's professional profile, first and foremost, they are not looking for entry-level professionals or mid-level professionals. For this program, they very much prefer individuals who are in senior professions. Now, they're looking for directors, they're looking for vice presidents, they're looking for board members, they're looking for senior managers. So these are the kind of positions that they're looking for. Now, in terms of how we show, I mean, yes, if you're an individual who is entry level or mid level, and you have come up with a service or a product that's going to really change the landscape in terms of your sector, then yes, definitely that you're someone that they will consider as well. But essentially, your work needs to have an impact in your sector, in the Australian community, is how to look at it. Now, the way we present it to the department is in many forms. We look at the organisation that you currently work for. We look at how you got there in terms of your previous roles. We look at your achievements. So, and this can be in the form of awards and accolades, or we look at, for example, engineers, do you have any patents? What sets you out from the rest? We look at things like, do you get invited to events where you're a guest speaker because of your skill set or your understanding in your sector? We look at the projects that you've worked on. So this can be projects, both nationally and internationally, they look at the dollar value of the projects, because obviously the higher the dollar value, the more prominent you're standing in the company. They're not going to give an individual who's not prominent big projects to work on, to lead, basically. So there are many ways we establish a person's prominence in their sector. It just depends on what they've done and what we take out of it and we put forward to the department.
Yes, thank you, Wazma. So there are two questions that I think our viewers might also have. Number one is, what if I'm not working? Let's say I'm not working, but I've just recently completed a PhD, or I'm in entry level, but as you said, I've done something extraordinary and probably invented an application or a technology that is going to help my particular target sector. So how do you prove, if you're not working in the industry, how do you then look at yourself and prove that you're highly talented?
So an individual who's completed a PhD or is about to complete a PhD, they look at how the individual came to deciding that they want to do a PhD. So what was their career growth until they got there? And then up until this moment, what have you done? So in terms of the article published, if you've done a book chapter, if you've received international recognitions, for example, has someone else in your sector who's currently located nationally or internationally approached you and said, I'm really interested in the work that you've done, can we collaborate? So this is, there are so many different ways how we can present your prominence to the department if you are a PhD candidate. It all depends on what you've achieved so far and how much you've put yourself out there. So the one thing that I can't emphasize enough is, if you are confident that you're working on something that's going to set you apart, put your name out there. Make sure that, whether it's the local government or whether it's individuals in your sector who are organizations in the country that you live in, whether it's local or international, that you've had these conversations with them in terms of what you are offering. If you are an individual, entry-level professional who's come up with a new app, for example, or a new service that's going to change the landscape of your sector, without a doubt, you would have received some sort of,
investment or interest from other
exactly right, from organizations where they've approached you and they said, I'm interested in your product, or I'm interested in your service. And this is how we prepare it.
So as my venture capital funds approaching you, or even approving your idea, is also one of the, or even venture capital fund willing to invest in your idea is
Correct.
Also one of the indication that your idea is something really good, because obviously otherwise VCs would not really agree to support your idea, right? And Wazma, I've got let's say, I think the other things that we can also add on is international projects. When you say international projects, and as Wazma mentioned that when you're getting into the international projects that has a high dollar value and a high complexity, and at the same time, sometimes what we see is just some particular projects has a lot of clearances to go through, and having those clearances itself is also even if you were not a very big part of that project, but you were part of that project even in a small scale level, you can still be considered a good or a talented person, because going through those high end clearances, like for example defense projects, where you have to go through a lot of national security clearances, and having those clearances itself is very is also one of the things that you can show that, look, I have got this clearance, which very few people gets it. So that means you got in entry into one of the projects. That's also one of the achievements you can show as your achievements. Now, Wazma, last question from talent part is, you mentioned you should have no difficulty in obtaining employment in Australia. Now, how do you show that I will not have? Like, let's say, for example, if I'm in Australia, yes, I will show up my job offer, or if I'm working, I'll show my payslips or a contract. But if I'm not in Australia and I'm overseas somewhere in Singapore or Dubai or any other country in the world, how do I prove that I will have no difficulty in finding employment in Australia?
Okay, so we do this in two different ways, and again, I want to emphasize that of late, I'd say in the past year or so, the department are really looking at this particular point. They want to know if you do have the capability to find a job in Australia. Now, this is something that I discuss in detail in consultations with clients. Now, the one thing I say to clients, especially if they're senior level professionals, you're on LinkedIn. For sure, without a doubt, you're on LinkedIn and you've got a professional network. Reach out to them. Reach out to them, whether it's by a second person or a third person or directly if you have contacts in Australia. Do not be afraid. There's a reason why these sectors are called future-focused sectors. The Australian government are consistently looking for individuals who are well versed in these sectors to come into Australia, and they want to keep them here basically. Now, have the discussion. Don't be afraid. Say, this is the program that I'm interested in. Is there anything that's available for me? Now, that person may not have something themselves, but they might know of a company that needs an individual, because these candidates are usually quite high up. So, and as we know, the current gap skill in Australia, where senior level professionals are being poached from one company to another, the demand for them is quite high, especially women. So practice the question, put yourself out there, and you'd be surprised. So many of my clients, at first when I say this to them, they're a bit reluctant, A, because they're quite high up, and B, it's not the most easiest question to ask. I kid you not, within 2-3 days later, they come to me and they say they've had conversations with people and they found companies that are interested to provide them a letter of offer. Now, a letter of offer is not binding by law on either party, but it's something that says if this individual were to get their permanent residency in Australia, then my company is willing to hire them in X, Y, and Z position, giving them a salary of a certain amount and briefly detailing their role. Now, things change, right? Whether it's the organization or the individual's needs. So it's not binding. They don't have to, it's not going to be a requirement that they have to work with this company when they get to Australia. If they get better opportunities, they do have that flexibility. But it just shows the Australian government that, they've put themselves out there and that they've actually found companies that are interested in them. Now, if that door closes, then there is another way where we do, where we prepare a document that allows the individual to show that they have the capacity to find work in Australia, which is something that we offer at Aussizz if they can't do the first.
That's right. Thank you very much, Wazma. Now, the next question is, how do you demonstrate international achievements in your sector? So if you can probably quickly, we have very less time, so if you can quickly walk us through that as well, please.
Sure. So certifications, awards, accolades, research paper, in terms of the research that you've done, publications, book chapters, if you've got a startup, business ownerships, students who have, again, received recognition from the national and international, whether it's universities or companies or, around the world for the work that they've done, for the research that they've done. There are so many different ways. So don't be afraid. If you don't have a lot of achievements, there's always a way to get around it. The possibilities are endless.
Right. And so there are just a few examples on the screen for our viewers. So if you can have a look at it, and if you like, you can take a screenshot. I'll leave it for a second. So basically, you can show your technology, research, business, other options that you have, and students for what you can show. So these are just an examples of what we have used in the past, but there could be more as well. So it depends on individual case. We look at it and then advise you on what else we can provide to support your case. Correct. So let's go next. So Wazma, the requirement is still that, let's say if I've achieved something 5 years ago, that's not going to be accepted, right? So I still have to be prominent. So if you Correct. Can, and also cover the part of how do we see that, yes, I'm an asset to Australia. So if you can put some light on it.
Sure. So still being prominent is very straightforward. They want to know, are you still working in your sector? Are you still actively working in your sector? So it's whether, you could be a director, you could be a consultant, you could be a worker of a multinational corporation. So they just want to know that you're still contributing in your sector and you've got a senior level role, or you've got a important role in your organization and you're making a difference in terms of the day-to-day. Now, in terms of asset to Australia, again, they look at what you've achieved so far, your skill set, your experience, the companies that you've worked with, your understanding of, your years of experience, and then that's how we project to the department that we put forward, saying that, these are the ways how this individual is going to be an asset to Australia because of the years of the experience or the experience they've accumulated. So, so many different ways.
Okay. Thank you very much, Wazma. Now, other things that we can probably show is, let's say, we have already covered this, where you can show your employment contracts or an offer of employment in your area, which will, or if you have a current employment in Australia, already if you're in Australia, you can also show your pay slips or last financial year's income, overall income statement to show all your tax returns to show that you've been earning so much in Australia already. Even if you are close to that amount, you can also use that. So a self-employment could be, let's say, your business, or if you have been receiving multiple multiple source of income. So let's say, for example, you're teaching at university, you're also participating in the business activity, you're also working for someone, or you're doing a freelancing, and altogether it makes it up to the amount as well. You can also show that. Any scholarships you have received is also one of the evidences that, obviously, because you would not qualify for a scholarship without being very good at your field, right? And any academic achievements you have, as Wazma mentioned earlier. Now, Wazma, can you walk us through the high income threshold? How does it work, and how do we prove that?
Thanks.
Wazma, can you walk us through the high income threshold?
Okay, so with the high income threshold, basically what they look at, if you are currently employed in Australia, they look at the... Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Vaibhav?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, so the high income threshold, basically, if you are currently employed in Australia, they look at your current employment, they look at how much you're currently earning, and if it's close to the high income threshold as set by the Australian government. They also take into consideration if it is a bit lower than the high income threshold, they understand that any individual who is on a temporary visa is never going to get paid the same as an individual who's here on a permanent visa. They know that your prospects are going to be a lot higher once you get your permanent residency. So they do take that into account. And again, if you're situated overseas and you're currently working, they look at your income that you're currently earning in whichever country you're in, and they take that into account as well. How much that position gets paid in that particular country, that's how they calculate it if you're senior enough, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. So let's say, for example, if somebody is sitting in India, let's say example, and they're getting equivalent to 100,000 Australian dollars while sitting in India, they probably have a better chances of getting, because that amount is very huge in India, but then that is not very good in
Correct.
Australia, right? Because the economic condition of those two countries are different. But that amount is considered to be a very good in that particular country. So, but if that person comes to Australia, they might be able to attract more than $300,000 equivalent, because what they're getting paid in that country is equivalent to how much somebody would earn 300K in Australia in similar positions. So next question was
exactly right.
nominator. Now I think a lot of people find it very difficult in finding nominator, number one. So let's start with the requirement on what is the requirement for the nominator, and I will ask you a few questions on this.
Sure. So the nominator is, as this visa pathway has transformed over the years, the nominator's role has become more and more important. So the nominator can be either a individual or a organization.
You're on mute, Wazma.
So are you guys able to hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay. So the nominator can be either a individual or it can be an Australian organisation. If the nominator is an individual, they have to be either a permanent resident of Australia or an Australian citizen or a permanent resident of New Zealand. If it's an Australian organisation, it just means that they need to be a company that's registered in Australia with an ABN number. Now, whether it's an individual or an organisation, they have to be from the same sector that you are applying from. For example, if you're applying in digital technology, your nominator has to be from the digital technology sector as well. Now, the more prominent your nominator, for example, some candidates have the option of a few individuals that can nominate them. And I always say to them, choose the individual with the highest, most senior profile, because the more senior your nominator, the better your chances at getting a invitation or being successful in this visa pathway.
Right. So, Wazma,
yes.
If I have, let's say, a few nominators, what do I do is choose one, yes, as you advised. So what do I do with the rest? Do I still keep them?
You can always use them as a reference. So I always say to clients that if you have, a few people to choose from, let's analyze their profile. The individual with the most strongest profile will utilize as a nominator, and the others we can use as a reference.
Right. And does this nominator also have to be prominent as of now as well in the field, or they can be someone who was prominent in the past but no longer working in the industry or retired, let's say?
So they still have to be currently prominent. So they have to be involved in the sector in one way or another, whether they're employed directly or whether if they're providing consultancy or contracting, but they have to be currently prominent and working in their sector. Now, again, the more prominent the individual's profile, which means the more achievements, the more senior the profile, the better it is for the candidate.
Right. Thank you very much, Wazma. Now, coming up to the process. Now, coming to the process, so application process works like this. So number one is obviously you go through all these criteria that we have discussed so far. Make sure you meet all the criteria, collect all the documents that you can collect, and then gather all these documents together and submit an expression of interest. So that is, we call it EOI for a global talent program. Now, after you submit your EOI, you have to wait for the department to assess your profile and come back to you and say, hey, whether we liked your profile or we didn't like your profile. If they like your profile, you receive an unique identifier or a reference number that allows you to submit the visa application for subclass 858, which is the step 3. So you receive the unique identifier and then you submit the visa application. Now, a lot of people are scared that if I get a no, that means it's a refusal and it's going to have a bad mark on my case. No. So this is not a visa application. When you apply for an EOI, if they reject your EOI, let's say, or if they say deny your EOI, that does not mean that you had a refusal of any kind. It's just simply they say that, look, you don't seem to fit in our boxes, and maybe you tick most of it, but you don't tick one of these boxes, and therefore we don't want to offer you a unique identifier or an 858 visa. That does not mean that your visa is refused or you had any kind of refusal. So sometimes people are scared to even try for a step 1, which is lodging an EOI, because it doesn't cost you anything. It's just, you're just going to have to gather all your documents and submit it. If you think you qualify, obviously don't waste the department's time if you think you don't meet the criteria. But if you think you meet the criteria and you have at least good chances, definitely go ahead and submit an expression of interest. Wazma, would you like to add anything on this application process? You have anything to add on here?
And you, if your EOI is not successful the first time, the department also gives you the opportunity to reapply. Obviously, we would wait and until your profile is, there's any differences or there's something's changed in terms of your prominence and your achievements, but you do have the option of reapplying in the future.
Right. And can you also walk us through the processing time, Wazma?
At the moment, for the expression of interest stage 1, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And for the visa, and then once you get an invite and once we've applied for your visa, at the moment, that's taking anywhere between 9 to 11 months at the moment.
Right. And once you get an invitation, is there any chance of rejection of the visa?
We haven't had any rejections in terms of our clients. For Aussizz, we have not had a single rejection. I guess there's always, a chance for your visa to get rejected, depending on the information that they come across. However, if we've given them everything that they needed to know, the chances are very, very, very slim.
Right. And probably this 0.5% refusal could be of the reason, let's say, from where the applicant does not meet health and character requirement. That could be also one of the factors that
Correct.
could lead to a visa refusal if you probably have you or your family member do not meet the health or a character requirement, right? So that's about the global talent visa. Now, the prospective applicants. If Wazma, if I were to say, hey, if you can tell me which profile is likely to get approved for sure, what profiles might, it might have 50% chances, and which profile definitely no. So whether it's yes, maybe, or no, how do you define that?
Senior level professionals, like I said, if you're a director, you're a VP, you are senior managers with many years of experience, who've worked on major projects, and you're working for prominent organizations, you've got a very good chance. Obviously meeting the high income threshold criteria. Individuals who are mid-level, who have just started, taking on big projects, but they haven't really made a difference in terms of their sector. Your prospects are very 50-50. I would wait until your projects, senior projects, before you apply, as it increases your chances. Again, but it's completely up to the individual. Some people do want to give it a go. Unlikely, like us, entry-level professionals who have just started working in their sector, or PhD students who have just started their course, who really haven't done anything to make an impact on their sector, then your chances are quite low.
Thank you, Wazma. Now, just important news for you guys, so that the Global Talent Visa will be renamed to a National Innovation Visa. So it will probably have a stream. So this will probably start from November 2024. Until then, the Global Talent Program is still on, and then after that, probably it will transition. It will transit to something called a National Innovation Visa, and it might have one of the streams might be a Global Talent Program. Now, there is one more topic that we want to cover is MATES program. I will not take much time. It's a very quick one. So MATES program is only for applicants who are coming, who holds a passport from India. And this program is just limited for certain applicants only, which is, this program is quite, the reason we kept it with the Global Talent is because it's quite similar to what we have seen, to the criteria what we have seen in the Global Talent, but it's maybe a younger version of our Global Talent program. So the requirements are, let's say, you must be under 30 years of age, and you must not have previously used the MATES program. Anyways, the MATES program wasn't there, so nobody would have used it anyways. But yes, if you have used it once, then you can't use it second time. So you can only use it once. You must demonstrate a proficient English language abilities, where you need to have at least 6 in IELTS, and no less than 5 in any of the modules in IELTS exam, or equivalent score in other tests, right? And you must have obtained a degree within the last 2 years from an accredited educational institution. Now, with your degree, your degrees must be in one of these fields, which is, let's say, either renewable energy, mining engineering, information communication technology, artificial intelligence, fintech, and agricultural technology. Right, and this program has got only 3,000 places available for this financial year. That means this is just a pilot program, so it's an initial offering. It might change, it might increase or go down depending on the success of the project. But right now they have limited to 3,000 places, which I believe will have a lot of competition. But it's worth giving it a go, because there will be ballot, which will start from, I think, November 2024 sometime. And you can also include families with your application. And generally, a MATES program will allow you to live in Australia for up to 24 months. And can you extend it? Yes, you can, but you'll have to probably apply for some other visa, like such as, for example, if your occupation is on a skilled occupation list, you can apply for a subclass 482 if you have an employer who wants to sponsor, or you can choose to apply for other visas like skill visas such as 189, 190, 491. Yes, visa cost will be around $25 to apply for a ballot. And if you are selected, then you'll be paying $365 for a visa application. Right, the program, as we mentioned, is expected to commence from 1st of November 2024.
We can conclude this session.
Thank you very much, everyone,
Thank you
for
so
joining
much.
us today.
Thank you, everyone.